one of my favorite quotes from Bill Mollison, who's the founder of Permaculture. He said, the central problem with all revolutions is that they're utterly dependent upon the system they're trying to overthrow, and they print more words and bullets than they do food and shelter. I want to build the parallel society one homestead at a time.
You're listening to How I Grow This, exploring stories of gardeners from across the globe as we learn from their biggest tips and tricks to some of the things not to do. I'm your host, Luke Hammond. All right, you guys are in for a total treat today. And this podcast episode is the longest coming podcast episode. Believe it or not, today's guest, Takota Coen, we got halfway through an episode a year ago. And the internet died, and it was a very tight schedule to get in there. And there was no way we could re-record it with the window with how busy this man, Takota Coen, is with buildingyourhomestead.com and Coen Farms. He does amazing work, and you guys are in for a treat today. Takota Coen, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be back. I apologize for the many, many delays.
Well, it is good to have you back. I know that I was so bummed, like my heart was crushed when I watched the internet just kind of die on us and we couldn't connect because it was so good. And so there's probably no way we can emulate or go into it at that level, but let's do it. Takota, can you start with giving me the scope of your farm, how it's designed, and kind of what you're known for in regards to permaculture?
Sure. Yeah, so I was born and raised on a 250-acre mixed organic farm in central Alberta, Canada. We're kind of a growing zone, 3A, 3B. So we get to minus 40, which is the same as Celsius and Fahrenheit.
Woo!
We'll go up to plus 40 or 110, 120 Fahrenheit every year. And we get about, if we're lucky, 12 inches of rain a year and maybe 10, 12 inches of snow. So we're pretty much the most inhospitable climate in the world.
Okay, so help me break this down. So you're literally negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and it goes up to 110 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. Crazy hot. What's your elevation?
We're around like 9 meters, which would be like 2,500 feet.
Okay, so not quite high desert, but kind of high desert, and your precipitation definitely makes you fall into a brittle climate.
Yes. Yeah, we get less rain than the Sahara Desert.
Okay. So crazy cold, crazy hot. What are you able to produce in these kind of growing conditions on your farm?
Yeah, so we have a very, short growing season. It's basically 110 days if we're lucky. And, one of my colleagues, Chris, who works at, Building Your Homestead with me, he's just a couple hours south of me, closer to the mountains. And he's lucky if they get 80, 90 days of growing window. It's super short. So yeah, anything that we do has to be like super hardy, but we can still do the staples, potatoes, carrots, onions, corn, beans, peas. We can pretty much grow anything if you got a green enough thumb, but everything has to be very dialed in. And that's on the garden side of things. But in our climate, animals are our friends. So, like on our farm, we do milk-fed pork and grass-fed beef and, eggs and meat birds and stuff like that. And like in our kind of in the broad acre, in our local context, like grain is really popular. Like wheat, barley, peas. There's a lot of canola in our area. It's not quite a long enough growing season for crop farmers to do corn or soybeans where we are. But yeah, we do get enough rain for dry land farming in our area.
Okay. So what's your latitude? How much daylight hours do you have in peak summer? And then how much darkness do you have in winter?
Yeah, I think we're 52
Okay.
latitude. And so like our summer sun angle it's like 61 degrees, off the horizontal. And then in the wintertime, it's like 14 degrees. We're not as crazy as like if you go up to like the north, like the Yukon or anything like that, where it's like 24 hours daylight. But what would our daylight hours? In the wintertime, it's probably at the worst, 5, 6 hours of daytime daylight, and then in the summertime at peak, we'll get probably 12 hours of daylight. I bet. I
Okay.
don't quote me off those by heart,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, it's enough to grow everything. Like one of the things that like we chatted about last time is like we don't really use greenhouses in our area. We don't start a lot of things apart from tomatoes is the only thing that my mom starts. And I don't even grow those. Just my goal is to try to direct seed everything I can. Even with that, we can still grow, all the things I just said without any
Mhm.
issue.
So a big part of that is probably the fast and furious growth cycle with the light that's
Yeah,
provided.
yeah,
What
yeah.
is
It makes a big difference. Like I said, it's not as bad as the Yukon where they get like 24-hour sunlight. Stuff up there grows
Mhm,
crazy big, but
mhm.
we're kind of in the happy medium between that.
Okay. What you're talking about direct seeding, and so that window, your average last frost, when is that coming for that window? And you're trying to direct seed some of those
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Um,
Typically May 15th. Like May long weekend is usually when most people plant their gardens here, or at
okay.
least the stuff that's frost sensitive. Um, and but you can plant cold hardier stuff like potatoes and stuff. Probably 2 3 weeks earlier if you're lucky. But every once in a like we've had frost in every month except for July historically, like
Right.
a killing frost. So you know, every once in a while you lose some. That's something we can get into is like, a big part of what, my, permaculture design background is like, okay, where do we, given all this climatic context, how do we find microclimates in our, designs where our gardens we're going to get the most out of every element, whether it's a food forest or a garden or animal systems. And so, when I placed my garden at my new property, I made sure that I was, on a high slope, protected by trees, so that I'll miss the first two and the last two frosts of the year. Whereas at our old farm site, where my parents first put their garden before we knew about a lot of this stuff, they'll get hammered, and they're out with blankets and tarps a month before I have to even think about that. So even like you can still push things a lot with just an understanding of how to find these microclimate pockets.
So just the geographic micro climate pockets. Let's break that down on how you consult all over the globe, and you do a lot of work in the United States through different growing zone belts. Um, what are some of the factors, like if you're looking at a property that you're going to first observe and witness and try to establish where these microclimates are going to be situated, or is it less prominent down south in Texas and Tennessee and a lot of the areas you work?
I mean,
Walk me through that process.
yeah, yeah. So like a microclimate is just like a unique little ecosystem. Or call it like the Goldilocks zone, on your property, and there can be, you know, cool, wet, cool, dry, sunny, hot, sunny, wet, like just any kind of permutation you want, which is kind of the intersection between your aspect, which is what direction your land is facing. So think of it like a solar panel, like, you want that facing directly south because that's going to give you the most sun. But if you're on a north facing slope, that's going to be, shadier and more likely cooler and wetter because there's not as much evaporation. But then you intersect that with, say, slope, or the shape of the terrain, and you can get some really cool permutations where it's a south facing slope, but it's towards the bottom of the property, next to a creek. And so that's one kind of a microclimate versus the top of a hill. Now you start getting into weather elements. It's like, what directions do the wind come from? Are there existing shelter belts? Are there other geographical features like lakes or mountains in the area that are changing some of those weather patterns? Now, in Alberta here, certain parts of the province are, you can't get hail insurance. because it's
Mm.
just so you
It's
get hailed
always
out
hail.
every year, right?
Mm.
And so there's vehicle dealerships lots in 2 or 3 cities just a couple hours away from me where every single dealership lot has to have these massive tarp structures over them because they just get hailed out so often because they're in this perfect microclimate where the weather systems as it's coming over the Rocky Mountains
Mm.
just turns into hail quite a bit. And
Mm.
so it's like all of those factors, every single site is unique. Every single, climate is unique that you're in. And it just really goes down to, what are your goals and how do those align with what the reality of your site and where can we find some of those intersection points or overlaps?
Mm. That's so good. You know, I that triggered just the thinking of some of the mountain roads in northern Arizona. And there's these little pockets on what's called the Mogollon Rim from basically Phoenix going up to Flagstaff in that range where you can be driving those mountain roads, and in the winter you might see a little bit of snow and then you see other snow, and then shortly after snow there's these little bands of pockets that are just like these black holes of snow. And for whatever reason all the snow falls, and so where a normal place would get 8-inch snow, they're getting an 18-inch snow on a regular basis when those storms come through.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's everywhere. Like even in our area. So we get about 12 inches of rain average in our area, but just like a few miles away from us, they'll get almost double that amount of rainfall because we live next to a lake and it's a big enough lake that it has its own kind of orographic effect, which is the same effect that, mountains have as weather systems are passing over them, where, a lot of these weather systems that are coming from the west will just skip over top of us. And so, in a really extreme storm where we'll get half an inch, they'll get two pretty reliably. Or in Alberta, it's really common where, if you got a big enough lake, there'll be a dry side of the lake and a wet side of the lake. And the difference is typically about, double the rainfall from just one side to the other, even though it's only a mile. And so one of the things that I love to look for as cues whenever I'm, doing consulting is I look at the trees because they're essentially just like a long-standing average of all of these factors put together. And so, like, if the trees are all leaning one direction, well, that's the prevailing wind. If they're all really stunted, that could be drought, but it could also be poor soil. If there's certain kind of species like birch or cedar or willow, you've got a low water table or a really, just wet environment. Um, the other kind of understory plants, same thing. You'll be able to tell just what the history of kind of whatever microclimate you're in because certain plants just won't grow in some of these in other microclimates. And so yeah, whenever I'm looking at a site, the vegetation is the best kind of long term average because if you're just walking through and if it's just like a cleared pasture and you don't have longer trees or it's just been mowed, there's not much that you can tell. But if there's a stand of trees that's 100 years old or 50 years old, you can really tell a lot just by knowing how to read that landscape.
That's really interesting. And you're I don't want it to be selfish in this conversation, but there's a little bit where I'm like, have you seen a lot of changes taking place, maybe in the last few years, as we've seen significant storm patterns change across the central U.S.? We've seen a lot of significant shifts in tornadoes. I think Missouri had 16 different long stretch tornadoes, which is not typical for the state. Mississippi got hit really heavy with tornadoes. Tennessee has been getting increasingly hit with tornadoes. I know on my personal property, I've lost probably 20, um, 24-inch diameter oak trees from these tornadoes coming in late season when they're at leaf out and heavy rains, and then they're getting all just uprooted and pushed over. Are you beginning to see a lot of that across the country, or is that in just little pockets here and there?
Yeah, I mean it's really hard because I mean like the climatic data that we have is like the weather stations are usually like hundreds of miles apart. And so, I was watching a video the other day of like one of my favorite channels. It's called Practical Engineering. And he was looking at this, extreme storm event that caused a dam to blow out. Um, and he was looking at like the weather patterns from that storm event. And, just in one county, there's only like one tiny little spot that actually had an extreme event, but everybody else was like below the normal. And so
Hmm.
I think in general, what I've seen is like the extremes are getting extremer,
Hmm.
but it's still really, local. Now, i- is it getting extremer, or is it just that people are more connected and think like viral content just gets out more?
Yeah.
I don't know, because like, when I look back at some of the historical data for our area, you know, a lot of our big flooding and crazy storm events, like, my grandpa and dad tell me crazy stories that we haven't had anything close to some of the storms that we had back in the 70s. Um, and so I don't know. I mean, now what I will say is things like heat island effect are real, like the amount of city hardscaping and that is creating these heat domes, that's shifting weather patterns. I mean, we do know that various organizations are engaging in, weather modification like cloud seeding and stuff like that. That's starting to become more popular, or more. It was kind of poo-pooed for a lot of years, kind of like the chemtrails and stuff like that. But geoengineering is a real phenomenon that, whether it's just cloud seeding or other things like that, that various organizations are engaging in. I don't know what effect that has. And then just deforestation and, you know, um, it's like if you're going to go in a glider plane or something like that, and you go over a black field, that's where you're going to catch those thermals. And
Hmm.
so the more, broad acre deforestation, bare ground that we see in our agricultural land, all these things have an effect as we reduce our soil, organic matter that increases floods and droughts. There's kind of like a flip side. So there's a lot of factors that are at play here.
Hmm.
And so really what it comes down to is for me is like, how do we protect against as much of the stuff as we can?
Hmm.
And you can do a lot with things like shelter belts, with things like improving your organic matter, with things like proper, landscape management of just making sure
Hmm.
that you're not, fallowing your fields. Um, if you are in an area that has heavy, tornadoes and stuff like that, can you build a root cellar that also doubles as a storm shelter? That's kind of where I put all my focus is like the weather
Hmm.
has been changing forever. You
Right.
know, it's just we kind of got to play with the cards that were dealt.
Right.
Um, but yeah, as to what these patterns are, I haven't made any sense of it. And I've heard stuff on both sides that we're heading. Some scientists are saying it's warming, and there's other guys that are saying that we're headed to a mini ice age, and they've got data to show both sides. I don't know. I just want to grow my garden and
Perfect. Well, let's
yeah,
talk about growing your garden. Um, One of the things that I know from your farm's design and specifically your homestead is kind of these permaculture principles where you talk about workflows and walking out your door and things that you engage with. And you've done all kinds of designs of just your garden right next to that space that you walk to collect eggs and do those things. And then specifically hedgerows and multi-species hedgerows and multi-species hedgerow with orchard. Um, I want to dive into that a little bit. Um, I know that you have done a lot of work for Curtis Stone, who's very well known and designed a lot of his um, orchard with all these different species of trees with all very intense timings of w- how they interact with one another. Let's talk about the hedgerow and the orchard and kind of your overall principal practice around that.
sure, yeah. So the there's two kind of concepts I'll start with. The first one is the idea of zones or zones of use, which is, kind of one of the foundational design concepts in permaculture. And this is based around the just obvious insight that, the the further you go away from your house or where you live, the more area you have to manage, right? The area of a circle is a exponential function of its radius, right? So based off of that, we can deduce that if we want to have a really efficient farm, is the things that we need the most, or that the things that need us the most, we should put them as close to us as possible. So that's called like your inner zone. So in permaculture, there's typically 5 to 6 zones, depending on the stuff you're looking at, where the house is like zone 1, and then every zone you go out is, just a further radius away until you get to zone 5, which is your basically unmanaged landscape. And so, yeah, the things that you need the most or that need you the most, put them close to you, and the things that don't need a lot of management, put those further away. Pretty simple. So, a kitchen garden, for example, that's something that you're going to be visiting. It's essentially like a fridge, right? And so, like, imagine designing a kitchen where your fridge is on your second story, your stove is in your garage, and your sink is in the back patio. It would suck to cook. You would never cook it in, even though it's only maybe 20 feet.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And again, kitchen design, everyone knows about the work triangle. It's where you have that. There's a really good design between like the sink, the stove, and the fridge. And you've been in like really well designed kitchens where it's so enjoyable to cook. And then you've been in other ones where it just feels clunky, or if someone else is in there, you're bumping into each other.
Yeah. Why did they put that in that drawer?
Yeah.
Why is that all the way over there? Yeah.
Totally. And so, like, everyone knows that intuitively in their kitchens, but as soon as they step out the back door, it's like most people, that just goes out the window. And I hear this all the time, is people say, well, I'm going to put my garden over there because that's where the best soil is. And it's like a couple 100 feet away from their back door. Now, if that was like your main crop garden, where you're just putting storage crops, things that you're going to plant, you might tend them twice a year and then you harvest. That's totally fine. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your kitchen garden, which is, it's like a fridge. You're going to be eating out of it, harvesting at least twice a day for most people. And so you want to put that, like Bill Mollison said, he's the co-founder of Permaculture. It's like, if you have to get your slippers wet to harvest your breakfast from your garden in the morning, it's too far away. So it's like literally like right out your back door. Right. I like to do it where it's right next to a door and out your kitchen window. Most people's kitchen windows face south. You can be washing your dishes, and as you're doing that, you're looking out, across your garden, and you can accomplish so much work just by nature of where you place them. So that's a kind of example of the zones concept there. Now, the other one I want to overlay is this sectors analysis. So energy sectors is another concept in permaculture design, which is, if you look at your house kind of, from above, and you imagine like a target, or like a bullseye target around it, you can imagine there's all kinds of energies coming at you. You've got wind energy, you've got, your sunlight, which changes from season to season. You've got, potentially traffic or noise or smells or views that you don't want or that you do want. Or, it could be that, you've got wildlife that are coming through. There could be water flows that are, problematic energy sectors. And so in permaculture, we look at our house as kind of the start of the center of our energy of operations. And we map out all these energy flows around us. And then we figure out, okay, which of these energies do we want and which do we not want? And how do we arrange elements strategically to either utilize the energies? Like, if you've got a wind that's coming in, that's a seasonal wind. Typically in the summertime, most winds go from come from the west. But in the spring, they'll switch to the east. Maybe you want to design your windows in your house where you're allowing those winds on the hot days to come through. Or you want to have some kind of an overhang on the south side of your house and the west side, so that those hot summer suns don't come in. So you're basically designing these kind of storage elements or these shield elements to either accept and utilize or deflect and, get rid of energies that are coming through your site. And so zones are about our energy and how it goes out into the system, and sectors are about how energies come at us from outside of our system.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we design all these elements, so the plants, animals, structures on our properties, we try to, like, every element should have 3 or more reasons for why it's placed exactly where it's placed. And
Mm.
so, can it accomplish multiple things just by nature of where it's designed? So, like that, my garden on the south side of my house, right next to my kitchen window so I can observe it, right next to my front door for easy access, and along my chore path so that anytime I'm going outside to tend my animals, I have to walk by it every day. Or if you don't have animals, are you commuting daily? Put it alongside where you're walking to your garage or you walk your kids to school. That's a really, really simple thing. And then we start to layer on, okay, so what's an energy we don't want? Well, maybe we want to shade some of the hot sun. Can
Mm.
we put some trees strategically around our garden such that they're not going to steal nutrients and water from our garden, but they're going to shade some of that hot west sun or the wind or wildlife or whatever? And so it gets really fun to just, like, every site is unique, as we talked about with the microclimate. So it's like you
Right.
figure out kind of where all these energies are coming from, and then how do we place these elements? And trees, or these hedgerows, as you were talking about, are a really useful element because, they're perennial, they're tall, uh, you can get so many yields out of them. You can get, food, fiber, fodder for animals, fertility in terms of a lot of these plants can be nitrogen fixers. You can get, feed for honeybees if you've got, wild pollinators or honeybees and you want to harvest the honey and wax. Um, and so it's just trying to create these kind of multifunctional, interconnected systems where, um, all of the needs and all of the yields of all the elements are just met from within the system just by nature of how they are designed.
Well, I think you opened up about 500 questions that I would want to ask. Let's move and continue in the direction that you were going with the perennials and the hedge crops. I think a lot of people have a couple different fears, maybe myself included, where if I'm designing these hedgerows for wind protection or fruit production or X, Y, or Z, we have to overcome a couple different things on them. We have to overcome how are we going to manage that? Are we going to manage the weed pressure with something other than just a mulch? Um, are we going to uh, stunt other things like you mentioned? Are we going to be planting things that may not be native to the area that could potentially cause, harm down the road? A single fruit tree or even an orchard is probably not causing harm, but an invasive species of, some sort of willow, you may have a question mark there. It may be good fodder, but it may not be the right plant in place. Depending, I'm not saying willows are bad. I'm just I'm just trying to open up that discussion of selection within hedgerows, specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll definitely touch on kind of like species selection, design for easy management, and yeah, we can definitely get into invasive species. I've got a bit of a different take on that, but we can
I
we
love
can
it.
touch on that for sure.
Let's do
So,
it.
um, let's go with the ease of management first. So one of I think the biggest mistakes that I made, and I see a lot of people make when they put in their first food forest or hedgerow, just any kind of planting, is they they don't think about the long term management and how to plant it in such a way that the maintenance is really easy. And essentially, the golden rule, or the non-negotiable in my mind, is like things need to be in rows. Like the first food forest I planted, in a lot of the books I read, is just like you just kind of went out and randomly put stuff everywhere, and it looks natural, but it was basically unusable, and it turned into a weedy mess. And there was no way to get mechanization or animal systems in there. And so that's the biggest thing is like it everything should be in rows. They don't necessarily have to be straight. They can follow the contour. They can have some kind of a aesthetic curve to it. But if it's in a row, now you can use chicken tractors alongside it. You can mow it with I mean, even if you're doing hand tools like a scythe, it's way easier to scythe in a row or along a straight surface than around, randomly placed things. The irrigation works better if you're going to use like certain kind of mulches work better. So it's like everything is just easier when it's in a row. Harvesting is a lot easier, and I would actually say that like a lot of people think that well rows aren't natural. And it's like well, I mean look at the riparian buffers, right? Like there's very clear lines where certain plants will grow and where they won't, and they're delineated as a line if you look at it from high enough up. Or in nature, a lot of berries or fruits are clumped together, and that's largely because pollinators like to go when they go out and they pollinate. They like to get from one flower at a time, and they don't want to be going 50 feet to pollinate
Their
a flower.
kitchen, their
Yeah,
kitchen is well organized.
and so like a lot of these things, it's just kind of misconceptions about how nature actually works that have led to some of these ideas where it's like in order for it to be ecological, it needs to be random. And that's not the case at all. And so yeah, there's a great guy on YouTube. His name's Byron Grows. He's got a really good syntropic food forest channel. He's in New Zealand, but he does stuff all over the world. And I love how he talks about like the reason we design is so that management is easy. Like the planting and the design accounts for an hour of work in terms of the hundreds of hours of labor that's going to go on for the next decades of harvesting this stuff. And so when we don't think about how we're going to maintain it and harvest it, everything just falls apart. So putting things in rows is not bad. You can do it in a way that it looks beautiful. I mean, yeah, in some of our previous conversations where I've showed pictures of our farm, where you can look at our, my YouTube channel and stuff like that. It's beautiful. And it's easy to manage. People always, when they come to our farm and they're like, how many people do you have working here? It's like, well, I've like a hired hand and my parents. It's basically like 3 people. Like I'm not doing much management anymore. I'm doing more of the marketing and kind of the business side of stuff. But it's like people are just blown away at just how much we're able to accomplish. But a lot of that is because we have really good systems. Putting things in rows. And then the other one I would say in for management is integrating animals. Like, you can get chickens or ducks or guinea pigs or geese or even I know some people have, dairy cows or small ruminants that are integrated into these hedgerows that are doing.
You gotta tell me, how are you integrating a guinea pig into the hedgerow?
I've never done it, but there's a guy on YouTube who he's got like a blueberry orchard, and he basically made like a chicken tractor but for guinea pigs. And they just pulls them along, and he's raising like hundreds of these little guinea pigs.
I love it. And so I'm guessing there's a hardwire bottom, and they're eating the grass that's growing up between that system.
Or I mean,
okay.
There's another guy, Stefan Subkowiak. I've had him on my podcast. I've never seen a picture of this thing, but he said he invented, basically it was like a giant hamster wheel, but it was for like chickens. And so like, cause like the chicken tractors are so hard to move, but he designed something that like the food and water was kind of hanging on like a central hub so that it would always hang down. But to roll this chicken tractor, you just pushed it, and it just, so like you can get super creative. Or I've seen people, they'll do moats around their garden, where it's like a little tunnel that the chickens can just go around the perimeter. It's small enough that you can step over, but there's no slugs or insects that get in because the chickens are just doing, the perimeter patrol.
Yeah, or, I've seen stuff like that. I like that.
One of my favorite examples of like integrating animals into systems is in Africa is a massive problem for these aid projects of they'll go out and plant a garden for these villagers, and it'll grow. And right when it's ready to harvest, elephants will come in and just eat everything. And so it's like, what are you gonna, how are you gonna build an elephant proof fence, in a third world country with no materials? And so somebody figured out that, well, what if we basically connected a bunch of beehives to a tripwire system around these gardens. And so now when an elephant comes in the middle of the night, they hit one of the wires and all the beehives start to shake. And the only thing out in the middle of the night is the elephants because everyone's in their house and the elephants get attacked by killer bees, basically. So
Wow.
it's
Mildly
like
risky, but they're
risky. Yeah. It's like one of the things I love about like permaculture systems is just like how creative people get with solving these like needs and yields problems.
Mm.
And so like a lot of people, and it's getting really bad on like this homesteading is increasing in popularity, but most people run, if they get animals, they effectively run a bed and breakfast for their animals. And everybody suffers. It's like they're slaves to their animals. They keep them locked up in pens. They bring them all their food. They take away all their manure. Like the animals don't want to be locked up either. It's like they want to work. Like, have you ever seen a pig, how much they enjoy digging, or how much a chicken loves scratching, or how much a goat loves, browsing? It's like put that to work for you. There's so much that you can get out of that rather than just keeping them locked in a pen and being their slave. So there's a lot of the fertilization, the weeding. I've got a YouTube channel. It's called Gardening with Livestock, where I use pigs and chickens and in various ways to do my weeding, fertilizing, and even like mulching for me. I like just setting straw bales out, cutting the strings, and then letting the chickens in, and they'll do a better job scattering,
Spreading.
spreading the mulch and de-weeding it than I ever could. And it's like a job that used to take me hours. The chickens love to do it. I was fighting them off before. So it's like, yeah, what are the things you hate doing? And it's like, how can you find an app that just loves to do that and then develop some kind of a system?
Mm.
I mean, another way to look at this animal stuff too is like the best quality chicken feed that you can buy on the market is still cheaper than the best quality compost you can buy. And so, in other words, it's like you can raise chickens, feed them really good quality feed, that's soy, corn, canola free, whatever, and you'll get more fertility than if you just bought compost and you get eggs and meat.
Mm.
And all the weeding and the pest control and the enjoyment and the diversity. And so it's the when you get these systems right, they have a synergistic effect where the sum is greater than its parts. And animals, I think, are a key piece that's missing from a lot of these systems for whether it's broadacre or
Right.
backyard. Yeah, so I'll pause there on management and see if you have anything specific before I go into like selection.
Whew. I mean, again, you opened up another 400. I think I could talk to you all day on these. As we speak, my chickens are in a mobile coop. It's probably my 10th reiteration design, just because I'm obsessed with design and the elements and the fun of the design. And the kids were on me and they're like, "Hey, the ticks are starting to come out. Can you put the chickens near our fort?" I said, "Sure." And so we last night moved all the chickens to where they open up and go into the wooded areas where the kids' fort are to hopefully work on deticking and clearing thatch and doing all that. So I love it.
Yeah, totally.
You just make me
There's
want to have more. But I want to, you talked about this, you're running a bed and breakfast for your animals, and it essentially, the human is frustrated because they're so tied down to their property, and the animals are frustrated because that's not how they're designed to live. What are some of the systems in which you can really free the human to have freedom and a quality of life that is not commonly associated with homestead living
yeah,
or farming?
yeah. I mean, it comes down to like systems and good infrastructure, really. So, like the chicken tractor you mentioned right there, like that's a great tool. So it's basically just some kind of a structure built in with fencing that's portable that you drag along, or it has wheels, or there's some kind of movement, and it can be really fast. There's lots of examples of them online. I've seen people build those kinds of tractors for pretty much every animal. Um, so that's a really simple one. There's a lot of really great temporary electric fencing systems that are on the market now that are really easy to move and pretty cost effective.
So each
Uh,
one of those, though, for the
so
animals, because animals do require care. They need to
yeah,
have care. They need to
yeah,
have eyes over them.
yeah,
And it seems like it's always inevitable that if you do take a vacation or you're gone,
yeah.
that's when something wrong happens.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're talking about, like, yeah, how do you kind of get away? Yeah. So, I mean, that right there is, this is one of the big things I go through with all my clients is like, what kind of lifestyle do you want to live? Because, like, if you want to be traveling for 6 months of the year, that's really going to limit the kinds of animals that you can have. But if even if you do want to travel a lot, there are still animal species like meat birds, which, they've got a, 8 to 12 week grow out cycle from basically the day you get them till the day they're harvested. So it's like, can you design your summer where if like, you're going to be around in that window? But yeah, it really does. There are some constraints, but even then, like, I've got a milk cow or milk cows on my farm, and 30 pigs, and part of my system. I've got videos on my YouTube channel where, like, I can milk 2 cows, feed 30 pigs, and do the chores for about 100 chickens in about an hour a day. And so that right there, and like a 12-year-old can do it. Like, it's not a complex system. And so that right there, it's like when I have to leave, it's really easy to train someone to do all those things because I have really good systems. Because I can just get a neighbor, parents, or now I've got a farmhand that does all that stuff for me. So again, coming back to this really efficient system, so that if you have to leave, you can get someone in who can take care of it. I mean, there's a lot of young people desperate for those kinds of work opportunities. I guarantee you, if you develop good systems and have a good place for them to live, you could make money, like, as like a training opportunity to bring someone in to, like, house sit your farm if you need to get away for a while, just because the learning experience would be so rich for someone who wants to start this kind of lifestyle. But then you can also just focus on animals or systems that are just very short duration, like meat birds, or seasonal egg layers or something like that. Or I even know businesses that they rent chickens for egg layers for the summer, and you can get like a chicken tractor, all the food, and
Rent a chicken.
yeah, rent a chicken for it's crazy expensive, but there's ways around. So
I think I would argue that that's what the world needs. While there may be, it may seem hard to find a good hand. And um, I think, I think that's what the world needs. They need to get outside and be a part of a nature ecosystem to recognize what that is
yeah,
and
yeah.
how you can live.
And
Oh,
there's a huge demand for that. Like, every couple years, I get a new farmhand who, like, basically manages the whole farm, milks the pigs, feeds the cows, grinds feed, and basically runs my farm for me, does all the rotational grazing, and I can train them in about 2 weeks to do pretty much everything, and then I'm just kind of on call for support. And whenever I send out I pay them well, they get a really nice room and board. They make typically like 35 to $40,000 Canadian a year, net plus room and board. And I have applications for people all over the world, like,
right, right.
begging to come in for this opportunity. And so, yeah, it's like, if you build the system, you'll have no shortage of people that want to come and work on a farm like this.
True. But your farm and your economics of your farm and your systems and the way it's designed, um, I would argue is way above the average farm.
Yes, but
Way,
it's not
way above.
it's not hard though. Like, or I shouldn't say it's it's simple, but it takes time. And like the I wasn't born into money. Like, we lived very poorly when I was a kid. I had to go get an off-farm job. Like we built everything from the ground up. It's not like Biggest Little Farm where we got, I don't know how many millions of dollars of outside funding. Like this, our farm paid for itself from the ground up. My parents raised 6 kids, you know, everything. So like it's totally doable. It takes some experimentation, some trial and error. But luckily, like there's so many people, and not just us, that have figured out so many of these systems that are replicatable. Like Joel Salatin and Gabe Brown, and I mean a lot of the market gardeners that are in the space now, like Curtis Stone. And so it's totally doable to build these systems. Takes, I was joking, it's 5 years to have an overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you want to do, it's going to take 5 years. But in 5 years, this is kind of one of the things we do with our clients now is like, in 5 years, tell me what your kind of net profit goal is for your business, whatever it is, and we'll design a business for you. Whether that's $200,000 or $1 million or whatever, it's like, I mean, you have to be realistic within your budget or like your context.
Right.
But it's super doable. Like our farm did over $1 million in sales last year, and
Okay,
like
let's just say that one more time. So your farm did over $1 million in sales.
over $1 million in sales just on the farm. That's not consulting and everything else. That's just the farm side of things.
And what is? I mean, obviously you have land, you have infrastructure, you have labor, you have all this stuff involved. What are you're running? What are your products that you're selling to sell that much revenue of stuff?
So mainly it would be about $300,000 to $400,000. That is like meat. So like our meat or protein. So our pigs, our beef cows, our eggs. We do sell a little bit of dairy as well. Don't tell the Canadian government.
Hey, America just passed
I
the
heard,
new law.
yeah.
Big thing for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll catch on here because I've got a visit from the raw milk police about a month ago and they threatened me. So anyway, so like about $350,000 to $400,000 a year is the kind of the protein or the animal products, and then the rest. I started a feed business about 4 years ago, and last year it did over $600,000 in sales. Where we're selling. I have a custom growers that grow a multi-species, effectively a cover crop of wheat, peas, barley, oats, vetch, clovers, sunflowers, all kinds of stuff. We harvest that. We grind it into various rations, mix in a few other minerals and fish meal and stuff like that. And we now have, like, as far as I know, it's like the only soy, corn, and canola free feed that is beyond organic in Western Canada. And it's cheaper than, the soy and corn alternatives that are terrible in quality.
Right.
So go ahead.
So regarding that ration, how is that harvested? Is that combine harvested and then it's mostly the seed pod, or is it cut as like a silage form?
No, we harvest it with just a regular combine. You just kind of average the mix, combine settings, and all my growers the first year they don't think it's going to work, and and then they try it and then they're hooked. So
very cool. And then what is kind of your tons per acre or your bushel per acre harvest on that on average?
Yeah, so we'll go from, it's actually interesting. So one of my growers last year, they live in an area of Alberta called St. Paul. They had 2 inches of rain last year. 2 inches of rain. Everyone else had a crop failure. They still averaged about 50 bushels per acre.
Whoa.
Which is like a phenomenal. So like I think their net was, it was like hundreds of dollars net profit per acre in a year where, I mean, in a good year, most guys would only net, $12 per acre. And so like it'll be anywhere from 50 to 90 bushels per acre for this mixed crop. And like the crop is effectively like a complete ration. So like I don't need to mix. If I didn't want to, I probably could get away with not even blending any minerals in. Like one of my growers feeds it straight to his chickens without doing anything else. I still add in a bit of, minerals and some fish meal supplements just to make sure it's high enough. But yeah, it's a really, really good crop. And then the straw that comes out of that is actually feed quality because there's such a diversity in there. So most of my growers also have livestock or cattle that they're then feeding the straw bales to, or they're swath grazing in the fields. And then the cover crops are actually regrowing after the fall harvest that can either be grazed in the spring or in the fall. So you're getting like multiple crops out of the same field. And like if you're doing all those things, the net profit per acre is like $600 to $800 per acre.
And are in terms of the management system, most of this is winter kill in your area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We,
and
we
so
our ground freezes 8 feet down.
yeah, so it's done, and uh, I'm assuming it's completely replanted and re-drilled every year in kind of a
Yeah.
no-till context.
Yeah. So some of the crops, if they're putting in, say, like a clover or a vetch or a rye or a triticale or something like that, that will come back in the spring for an early grazing if they want. But yes, the grain crop itself, like the wheat, peas, barley, flour, millet, that kind of a mix has to be planted every year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you're driving by that, does it just look like total anarchy coming out of the
Yeah.
ground?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. It looks like just a wild, pasture. Uh,
and it gets cut at, right at an inch or 2 inches, like a bean crop would.
Yeah, yeah. My growers swath it first. We don't desiccate the crop because it's all grown to beyond organic standards or beyond. So it's swathed and then it'll dry for a week or two, and then they combine it with a regular combine, and all the same equipment that you would use for everything else is just standard. And
Very cool. That's awesome stuff. So we've talked a lot and shifted into this kind of level of economy that has kind of changed and the economics behind regenerative agriculture and specifically homestead agriculture. So much of the homestead movement, there's kind of two, like some is like, um, we want to be the hotel for the animals and it's all stationary pens and we just want to go out and work really hard for no results. Then you have this whole other like movement of like, I'm going to just supply all of my food 100%, we're just us against the world kind of thing, so that if things go south, we can kind of handle our own. Where does this work in an economy? Like the economics of this, because there's so much money that it takes to run a farm. And if you're just doing that, you have to have some sort of external
yeah,
financial
yeah,
input.
totally, totally. So this is like my new kind of passion project
Your
is
bread and butter.
is driving this home because I see it all the time. I just always assumed it was kind of obvious, but the more that I've got into it, it's like it's no, like there's, like you said, there's these two camps. There's like the preppers, and then I'm now calling them like the LARPers, like the live action role players. Yeah.
Okay. I love it.
And so like you've got the preppers and the LARPers, and both of them are like they're not taking into consideration. One of my favorite quotes from Bill Malls, who was the founder of permaculture, he said, "The central problem with all revolutions is that they're utterly dependent upon the system they're trying to overthrow, and they print more words and bullets than they do food and shelter." And so it's like my goal is I want to build the parallel society, one homestead at a time. So there's all kinds of problems in the world. Everyone sees it, no matter where you are on the spectrum of, conspiracy theorist or just, average normie, there's problems, right? Like,
I mean, the world's perfect right now. Yeah. I mean, everything is great.
I mean, even just like on a base level, when is the last time that you got a product or service that was as advertised and you were like, man, that was totally worth the money? It's like everything sucks, right? It's like everything is just this race to the bottom. The regulatory systems have been captured. Like it sucks. And everybody, complains about it all day long. And then they're begging for, the system to fix it. but the system, as we know now, is completely broken and has been for decades as well. So like, but rather than getting black pilled about all that stuff, I see is like every one of those things that I used to complain about. Now I see is like that's a business opportunity.
Hmm.
It's like find an industry that you have relevant skills in, and ideally the industry is like heavily regulated because anytime there's heavy regulation, it just incentivizes shitty products and shitty service. And so if you can come in and produce some kind of a good or service that's better, faster, cheaper, more fun, you can completely disrupt the market. And I'm seeing this now everywhere all the time. And like it's just whether it's homeschooling, day camps for kids, or my feed business, or raw milk, or midwifery, or I mean, even like dispute resolution. It's like rather than calling the police, which don't do anything, it's like there's a lot of these like private dispute resolution companies that can come in and handle negotiations in like really tense environments. And so there's so many opportunities in these deeply troubled times. The problem is that people are either trying to run away from it or hide from it. Like that's kind of the prepper camp. And I used to be in that camp, but I realized at a certain point, it's like there's nowhere left to hide. I joke, it's like they literally control the weather. Where are you going to go?
Yeah. Well, it's way too cold up where you're at. So
yeah.
I think you're doing a pretty good job.
But then you've got these LARPers who are just kind of cash grabbing on the opportunity for like people are scared and they're looking for solutions. And these social media influencers who they don't have viable business plans. They're basically reality TV shows, and it's all around conflict and, oh no, my goats got out again. What are we going to do? Right? Versus like, what if you actually found a problem in your community and built a business that, ran Amazon, or like we literally ran a local feed mill out of business in our area. Like a multi-million-dollar, like they don't make organic feed anymore because I took all their customers. And so it's like, what are the ways that we can come in and disrupt this industry? Or the analogy that I gave, it's like, I don't know if you know the story of Gandhi, and how he kind of broke the whole Indian empire. So the Indian Empire wanted to create a monopoly on salt production through the British government, and so they passed a law where it was illegal to make your own salt. And so, anyways, Gandhi just decided he was going to walk across, India on this mission to go make salt, and he gathered all this publicity, and the whole system tried to attack him to stop him, but because it was just so wrong what he was doing, he was able to persevere and get through, and that ended up disrupting a big part of the system. Now, they didn't apply it consistently, and it's still a mess there as it is everywhere else. But that's kind of my vision for these homesteaders is we're essentially all going out, we're all making salt, we're not asking for permission, and we're not even going to beg for forgiveness if they come after us. We're just going to produce things to consenting customers and live a really good lifestyle and make the world a better place through business, through entrepreneurship. And so that's kind of our vision at Building Your Homestead is we want to work with entrepreneurs to help them buy, design, develop, and manage land so that we can build this parallel society one homestead at a time.
Gotcha. So if you're going to, in this podcast, primarily we talk about how we grow what we grow. Mm-hmm. If you're going to build a viable, successful garden business or homestead business, you start with the economics of what it's going to take to get going. And then how do you bring that back around and loop that back around to come full circle?
Full circle in terms of like starting a business, or?
Yeah, structure. Execution.
Yeah.
Delivery.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So it's like in order to make money, you have to have money to start with. And so what I mean by that is like you either need to be able to get a loan from your community or a bank, or you have to have some kind of an off-farm job. Like the biggest mistake that I made, and I see most people making, is they don't have enough financial capital or cash flow starting them off. And so they just like it's like trying to get a flywheel going on a motor. It's like if you don't put some energy in, you can't get it going. But once it's going and it has its own momentum and cash flow, it's easy. So that's the biggest thing is like you either need to start with, do your projections. It's just a math problem, start a spreadsheet. But, if you can get 100 and $200,000 or whatever it is in startup capital, whether that's through your off-farm job in, the old world or a loan from a bank or a community member or whatever, that's the biggest thing is start, have a strategy for how you're gonna cash flow that. Don't try to do it with, there's always going to be some experimentation and like it's going to take 5 years. So, say you want to start with your goal is $200,000 a year net income, right? Well, the first year is just experimentation and building systems and trialing stuff. You're not going to have a lot of sales. Second year, you might do $25,000 in sales. Third year is 50,000. Fourth year is 100, and the fifth year is 200. So you're doubling every year, and just with basic, marketing. Again, everyone else sees how shitty the products and services are in the world. As long as you're in a market where there's other people, like you don't want to try to produce eggs like the most markets around North America are flooded with farm eggs. Even Joe Salatin, eggs are a lost leader for him, right? I was like, that's not a great business to start into. So you've got to figure out, okay, what's something where the maths all the way through, and then we build this kind of 5-year plan. We start with either startup capital like a loan, or we're using our off-farm job, the salary to funnel into that. Kind of a thought experiment I give to people is like, go find last year's tax bill to the government that was deducted from your payrolls or whatever, or if you're already run a small business, and whatever that number was that you paid the government last year, that is effectively your budget to start a new business.
Okay.
Because if you structure your business the right way, any expenses are write-offs. And so this is how we built our farm over the years. Is we had multiple. I did construction, I did tiling. I still do some consulting and education and stuff. All of the income from those businesses, the way I have my businesses structured, is I can write those off into my other businesses to help cash flow them. And you can do that with even if you're on payroll with somebody else. You got to talk to your accountant and figure out how to do it. This isn't illegal. There are loopholes through all these things that you can totally do legitimately. But if you've got a $30,000-$40,000 tax bill to the government, which is pretty standard if you're making good money at a job, you can pretty much funnel that much money into your business and not have a tax bill, or at least get some of it back. So just some of those ideas, or maybe you're going to do a business where you buy raw land, but you still keep the house in town. And then at kind of year 3 or 4, whenever it makes sense, you sell the house and all the profit that's left from that, then you dump in. Like there has to be some kind of a strategy. But generally with the clients that I've worked with, within 5 years, you can, reliably build a business that disrupts some kind of product or service deficiency in your area, and build a clientele, and then just slowly transition into this kind of parallel society.
Awesome. Well, for those who are looking to maybe turn their gardening passion into a business, or their homesteading passion into a business, where do they find you and what you do and consulting and all the stuff? Where do they find you?
Yeah, so our website is buildingyourhomestead.com. We're rebuilding it for the 4th or 5th time right now, so
that's great.
It's pretty basic, but I've got a YouTube channel, I've got a book, I've got podcasts, all kinds of stuff. So there's all kinds of free information out there. People can go check that out, and then if they want to work with us, they can apply on the website. Again, we're trying to find clients who are looking to buy land, because if most of our clients who've already bought land, after a few hours on the phone with them and figuring what their goals are, it's like, you need to sell your land. It doesn't make any sense. Or you can get you can achieve your goals better, faster, cheaper if you actually just sell this piece and go buy one that is in alignment with what you want.
Mhm.
So, yeah, our goal is we want to help people buy, design, develop, and manage land so that we can build this parallel society, start actual profitable businesses that are gonna, the next time lockdowns come around or whatever else gets rolled out, we're gonna be better prepared for, having these small businesses that can, take the hit on that and just to have a community of people that are on the same page.
Very cool. You heard it from Takota Coen with Coen Farms and buildingyourhomestead.com. For those of you who don't know, this podcast was brought to you by Seed Time. If you are looking to plan your garden in a better way and actually maximize that space, Seed Time is a great place to do that and to utilize that software to its max potential. We have new features coming out all the time. Very excited about where Seed Time is going. You're joining over 500,000 users from all over the globe that have seen success with planting their garden, and you can start today absolutely free. So make sure you check out seedtime.us and start planting your first garden today. And thanks for staying tuned all the way to the end. We're so excited that you're here, and that probably means that you enjoyed what you heard. You found some value in it. If you could, go and share this with somebody that you know that really helps push it forward in the algorithm. Hit a like, a subscribe, hit a review. It makes all the difference for us. Thank you for listening to the How I Grow This podcast, and we are dedicated to bringing more of these stories to you to help you grow at the next level. We'll see you.